Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Love Cosma, and here we're going to talk about more of the journey of self-discovery and life improvement that we're all on, and where we're going to take a deep dive into Gemini, the sign of Gemini today, because we've gone over Aries and Taurus now. So now we've landed on the third sign of the zodiac, Gemini, which we can people who were born between the dates of May 21st, 22nd to June 21st or 22nd. Those are going to be people with the sun in Gemini. And let's get into it. Yeah, like and subscribe. All of my links are down below, and we'll just jump into it here. So the sign of Gemini, ruled by Mercury. What is Mercury, and what does this mean? Well, Geminis are really good at communication. Those are one of the things that really stand out to me about Geminis. You're able to really kind of talk to anybody and do something that is kind of hard for me, which is like small talk. You're just I think the reason for that is because you're so curious. You're very curious about just everything. So it makes you really interested in just like what people are thinking about, like just even the simplest things. So it makes you really good at like small talk and just like chatting with somebody, a good conversationalist. And that's interesting because Mercury does rule over communication. You might know Mercury as the messenger god in many different uh, systems of deities. But yeah, Mercury is the one that is going the Mercury is the closest sign to the sun, and it also is the fastest moving planet, if I'm not mistaken. So Mercury has this energy of restlessness that it gives to Gemini as well. So Geminis can be a little bit restless, a little bit nervous, um, but that also gives you this quick fastness. Also gives you very quick processing speed. That's another thing, huge thing that I know about Geminis. You are very quick thinkers. You can become very smart, of course. That depends on what placements of Gemini you have. Um, but you can definitely be very fast to get things or pick up on things. And if you have a lot of knowledge, if you that's one of the things that you can work on, is really being consistent with gaining knowledge, not just using your curiosity and like wasting it on things that don't matter, but actually accumulating knowledge. If you can actually be consistent at that, Gemini, then that's like one of the keys to reality for you, because you become like one of the smartest and most fast processing people that I've ever encountered. I think that I'm fast as an Aries, and Mercury is in Aries for me. So some people think that I'm like really fast and that I can speak really fast and that I can process things fast, until I meet a Gemini. Geminis like are much faster than me. And that also includes, that's Mercury in general, because so that will include Virgos too. Virgos, you and Gemini have these two things in common, that you're just super fast at processing large amounts of information quickly, much better than me. I'm kind of slow when it comes to that. I kind of like need to take my time and really think about a problem. It seems like Geminis look at it and they're like, "Oh, this is the answer." So I don't know if anyone out there can really any of the heavy Gemini placements out there can resonate with that. But yeah, it just comes. It leads to you coming across as very intelligent, just very intelligent, very good at communicating. But here's some things that I feel like people don't really understand about Gemini. I think that these are kind of like the more surface level things. I think we all think of people who like to talk and are extroverted when we think of Gemini. We might also think of people who are playful and creative. People who have a really good ability to be creative and just think of things outside of the box and be playful. Gemini is actually known as kind of like a trickster. The glyph for Gemini is the twins. So it's basically just kind of like the Roman numeral 2, which is actually supposed to be, just showing the dualistic nature of Gemini. Gemini actually can rule over, bipolarism, someone who is bipolar, someone who can be one way 1 minute and kind of one way another minute, which is kind of like what I mentioned in previous videos about the signs kind of reaching behind it and in front of it, for the signs that are in front and behind it. And for Gemini, the sign in front would be Cancer. And you kind of get this moodiness from Gemini, just like a Cancer. Cancer is ruled by Moon, but Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and it kind of has these similar characteristics, actually, of just kind of being changeable, easily being changed from one state to another. I think it's actually the first mutable sign. So it's actually the first sign whose modality would be mutable, and that is a very changeable sign. I would think of Gemini, if we think of Taurus as the person who never changes their mind and is stubborn, Gemini is like the soul's journey through evolution. After Taurus, it's like, okay, I'm done being just stable and routine oriented and very grounded. I want to be very changeable now. I want to change my mind easily instead of being stubborn or holding a grudge. I won't hold a grudge because I easily can see things in multiple different perspectives. Bipolarism. I mentioned bipolarism before. I think it's misunderstood. Bipolarism, what we label as bipolarism, can, I think, a lot of the times be out of balance Gemini energy or misunderstood Gemini energy. Because Gemini and Sagittarius, the opposite sign of Gemini, have this thing in common where they kind of like say the elephant in the room type thing. They don't really have they don't mind being argumentative and being confrontational, and they actually get kind of a joy out of arguing almost. They like to be the devil's advocate, and it makes it kind of seem like Gemini is two-faced in a sense, because it seems like they could be one way with one person and another way. But it's really just about the multifaceted nature of Gemini. Gemini doesn't always read the room correctly and know the appropriate time to say certain things. I think that's what gives that bipolar, sort of perspective to Gemini, because they might say things that are inappropriate for the time or inappropriate for the situation. But that has to do with Gemini's just kind of thinking outside of the box, being very curious, being very talkative. And it can get out of balance. So that's one thing that Gemini can remember, is to kind of be kind of calm that inner anxiety and that inner restlessness. Try to temper it a little bit, or find a good outlet for it, or a good way for you to let that energy out, that restlessness out, before it kind of bleeds out at the wrong times and makes you look like weird or whatever people like to label it as. But yeah, that, like I said, that's a thing that Sagittarius and Gemini have in common. Now, Sagittarius is known as the teacher, the wise old teacher, whereas Gemini is actually the child, the young, curious, playful child that just wants to explore and learn everything that it can about reality. And it's not the most how do you say, spiritual. I don't really want to say spiritual because I know Geminis that are spiritual people, but I don't think that it's the most like intuitive sign. It uses a lot of logic for things. So they use their logical, analytical mind a lot. They analyze things very smart, like I mentioned before. Very quickly analyze things, and yeah, that comes from that Mercury energy, just making them very intelligent, very good at communicating their thoughts, very playful, very creative. Um, so let's talk about some of the things that I really find different about Gemini compared to like me, like the type of way the way that I am. Geminis can kind of come across as flaky or maybe even superficial sometimes. That's not necessarily the case. Geminis, just kind of like a Cancer, have like that kind of a shell up. They have their surface level personality. Then once you get to know them, you get to know that deeper side of them, more of that duality, that dual nature to the Gemini. They have their mode of being extroverted and playful and out there, but they also have this sort of in introverted type personality to them too, that dualistic nature. They can be introverted sometimes and kind of come across as flaky because they kind of protect their own emotional well-being like a Cancer. They're not gonna, you need to really get their attention. You need to hook their attention, because they can be inconsistent. They can lose attention and lose focus and lose interest in things very quickly. So to get to a Gemini, you need to break through that barrier of you're boring, because Geminis are going to think that everything is boring. That's basically the Gemini energy, is why we get bored, is because we are curious. We want to be we want to be stimulated in some way by like our brains, we mentally we want it to be stimulated. So Geminis can be kind of like emotionally, can kind of seem emotionally shallow, because they just have that layer. It's kind of like I mentioned, they have that layer of you're boring, and you really kind of have to penetrate that layer and really become a consistent person in Gemini's life, because by their nature they're very changeable. They don't want to stay in one place very often, which is another thing they kind of have in common with Sagittarius, their sister sign. Now, Gemini can be a know-it-all sometimes, unfortunately. Like, as smart as Gemini is, they're really smart in the things that they've already come to, consider as right to themselves. So it's a little bit of that Taurus stubbornness left over from the previous, evolution, or the previous state of the sun or the souls in the soul's journey. You're just coming from Taurus, which is kind of like a stubborn sign. And Gemini, as changeable and mutable as they are, is sort of like that as well. They're a little bit stubborn in the way that they want to see things. Now, however, Geminis will quickly change their mind. They'll quickly go and research more and change their mind. But in the moment, like before Gemini does that research, they're going to argue you to death, because they just haven't gone and done that research themselves and internalized that information themselves. They think that they know something more than you at all times. They think that they're a know-it-all sometimes. It's unfortunate thing about Gemini that kind of I've noticed it a lot in people with Gemini energy. But that's what makes them so smart, that they really do know things when they know them. Like, it's not like you can count on a Gemini to at least not mistake something, that they know. At least, if that makes sense. Like, at least when they know something, they know it, and they can recall it quickly, and, they can tell you where they learned that information, until they come to new information and they have to internalize that new information. Sometimes it's hard for them to internalize that new information quickly on the spot. And it's a little bit of that, like, know it all. And like, but they can be changed. They like to argue. You can change the Gemini's mind, unlike Taurus. Taurus, you really kind of can't change their mind sometimes because they're just stubborn. But Gemini, you can change their mind. So even if they battle, because they like the intensity and the stimulation that comes from argument, so that's not going to be a big issue. But of course, they lose interest very quickly. So, that's Gemini. Super smart, super curious, lose interest very quickly, but will argue something. And they can be a little inconsistent. They can cancel on plans, just like Cancer's, the sign up ahead of them. What else? Let me see, check my notes if there's I probably didn't mention enough about their adaptability. Geminis are very adaptable. That is one of the things that is cool about them. They can come to a situation and absorb information about the situation very quickly and move on. But like I said, just watch out for being a know-it-all and thinking that you always know the answer. Listen to other people's advice and listen to what other people have to offer in a situation. If you can do that and keep that calmness like a Taurus, and keep that stability and that just like emotional aspect like a Cancer, so the two signs before and behind, if you can hit the sweet spot between those two, you are going to be the ultimate human, because now you have someone who's super smart, who's dedicated to actually finishing goals, who is going to be able to bring that clarity to situations as far as having the knowledge and recalling factual knowledge for you. Whereas, sometimes other signs just don't have it like that. They don't need to look in the notes. They don't need to, Geminis can be very smart and just have it all in their minds. But they're the student. They need to learn how to learn from other people, learn from life, not be know-it-alls. Listen to the elders. Listen to, people who might know more than them. So that's kind of my breakdown on Gemini. I think that is, I kind of didn't, there's a lot of stuff. Each time I make these videos, I'm like, man, there's so much that I didn't mention. But I think that will just give me stuff to talk about later. I'll continue to talk about these signs over and over again. And, just get my perspective of them out there. And I'll remember to change my mind as I get more information in the spirit of Gemini. So, yeah, I think that'll do it for this video. It was really fun talking about Gemini, because I think that I don't get to, Geminis always blow me off. You guys are flaky. We never get to actually hang out, like really hang out. I guess I might not be interesting enough. But I think that we totally would hit it off. When Geminis, when I do get to interact with Geminis, you're usually really fun and witty and sort of funny. I like to, you know what? There's a thing with Geminis. Y'all have a thing for status too, don't y'all? I don't know. I think that might be some of that residual Taurus energy as well. But y'all like to have money. And y'all like to have like status. Y'all like to gossip. You like to be a part of the scene a little bit. But also, like Cancer, you know how to retreat and, have that opposite dualistic nature of not being part of the scene. So that's another thing I almost forgot. Geminis can definitely have a thing for status and wanting to like gain status, gain popularity, gain, admiration amongst their peers and things like that. So, yeah, that's another thing about Gemini. But yeah, you guys are awesome. Thanks for being the smart, witty, comical people that you are. Bye, Geminis, and bye, everyone else. Thanks so much for tuning in this time, and I'll see you next time. Like and subscribe, and you'll find all of my links below.